welcome back to Two Tall Guys Talking Sales. We're your hosts. I'm Kevin.
And I'm Sean.
And we are glad you're here. Thanks for joining us. In this podcast, we talk about real sales issues, big and small, for salespeople, selling situations, and sales leadership. Collectively, we have over 50 years of sales, selling leadership, and sales acumen under our belts, and we're here to share a little bit of that with you in the next 15 minutes. We're glad you're here. Enjoy the show.
Quick question for everybody. Are you a salesperson who has to develop your own leads, turn them into prospects and opportunities, close the deal, and maybe even deliver the service? If you are, you're not alone. A lot of salespeople are what we call full sales cycle people. They have to own the entire life cycle, from cultivating new relationships out of thin air all the way to turning them into stark raving evangelists for our product. That can be a challenge because oftentimes what we find when Sean and I encounter people in that situation, they're one-dimensional in their outreach strategy. That one dimension is typically they're all relationship, or I spend all my time on LinkedIn, or only on email marketing, or only on cold calling. It's one option only because of a comfort level. What Sean and I are bringing to bear today is that you probably need an outreach strategy that's going to feel a little bit like skills development and use.
The issue is, if you're doing the same thing over and over and over again, you probably are struggling at some point and getting a bit of a roller coaster effect. And in fact, in the situation that Kevin just described, we have the problem of we're trying to develop the first stage of our pipeline, the leads, the people that are interested in our company, and then we're nurturing them through the process, and then we get really busy, and so we stop doing the outreach. We stop doing all the other stuff. And so we get a roller coaster effect where revenue comes in, we close a bunch of deals, and then we turn around, we have no pipeline. So we do a bunch of prospecting, and then we close all those leads, and then we have no pipeline again. And so, you do really good for 2 months and then do nothing for a month, and then do really good for 2 months, then you do nothing for a month as far as revenue is concerned. And that's just a tough way to live. You're always behind the 8 ball. Let's talk about how do we have a great outreach strategy. And Kevin kind of hinted at the goal here by saying, you only do email outreach, or you only do relationships, or you only do referral partners. And that's the problem. You only do one thing. You do one thing over and over again because, it kind of works. But you need things to happen when you're asleep. You need things to happen when you're not doing them. And that's how you get rid of the roller coaster effect. So you should always be reaching out to your referral partners. You should always be sending emails out. You should always be paying attention to LinkedIn. You should always be doing all of it. And you need to automate as much of that process as possible. The first step in any outreach program is understanding what is your territory and who's in your territory that you're going to reach out to. You need to build a really good list. And you need to build a list of names, not leads, names that you can reach out to and market to and send stuff to. There's lots of ways to do this. You could do it off of LinkedIn Sales Navigator. You could do it off of Seamless AI. You could do it off of one of my favorites, KnowledgeNet. You don't know anything about KnowledgeNet, maybe we'll talk about that in this episode a little bit. There's lots of ways to create the list of names. You create the list of names, and then you say your strategy is, I'm going to reach out to this list via LinkedIn. I'm going to reach out to this list via email. I'm going to reach out to this list via referral partners. Who do you know? Kind of conversation. And you do all of it at the same time. And you have a strategy of your first outreach is, maybe it's LinkedIn. Your second outreach a week later, 2 weeks later, is on email. The third one is, I reach out to my referral partners. Who do you know? Those types of conversations. And you have a strategy. You have a pipeline that does this. We've talked, Kevin, about having a pipeline, a process as you're developing your customers, developing your prospects and taking them through the process. We've also talked occasionally about having a marketing pipeline or leads pipeline, and that's what we need to talk about here. And that leads pipeline is, how do we take a name and turn it into a lead? If you're a marketing person, you'll say, how do we take a name and turn it into a marketing qualified lead? But once again, this is for salespeople that are doing it all. They can still do that same process, and they need to think of it that way.
Let's think through the what's available to me as a salesperson or a sales leader who's trying to encourage my sales team to be less one-dimensional. You know, and one-dimensional is not an absolute. You could be doing a lot of email and a little bit of calling and a little bit of LinkedIn and a little bit of networking, but in large part, you're relying on one major type. Let's illuminate that first. We've got things like chambers, economic development councils, other networking places are private networking, public networking, paid networking, free networking. That's just on building your body of listeners. Then you've got email, you've got LinkedIn messaging, you've got publishing your own content. What Sean and I are doing here with Two Tall Guys Talking Sales, our CEO workshop series, our private networking group. Sean runs a very successful Beers and Biz, a public networking group. There's a lot of things we do that have built our tribe of sorts to get an active listening base. And is it always aces? No. Some months you hit a high percentage on email. Some months you get a number of referrals because you've spent some intentional time 6 months ago cultivating those relationships. We need to be pulling all of these threads to weave the cloth that we want to cover our table. Boy, that's a weird analogy. But here's why that's important. It's weird because not everybody thinks about it like that. People think, oh, I need a lead magnet on LinkedIn and I need to post some specific ads or something about my product or solution, or, oh, I just need to go out and build my network, or, oh, anytime you use the word just or only, that should be a red flag to you as a leader or as a salesperson that you're probably not considering all your options. You got your blinders on of sorts. My encouragement to you is to think about where you have blinders on and where by taking them off, you could grow your revenue or grow your commission.
And the next thing I want you to think about after you figure out all the different avenues or the ways that you're going to reach out to people is, what are you going to say to them? We know from our own experience that we will remember a commercial on TV only if we've seen it a couple times. You've done it before. I'm going to pick on one of my favorite. We know that when we watch TV, we watch the games, we watch golf or whatever we're into, we're going to have Mayhem come on. Mayhem from Allstate. And he's great. But you don't even know that you're talking about Allstate. But you do know that you're talking about Mayhem. You're talking about doing crazy things. You're talking about bad things that are happening. But they become memorable. And the reason they become memorable is because you have seen that same ad 10 times. And the ads are good enough that you paid attention to them. You need to take that same strategy with your outreach to your prospects. You need to touch them with a little bit of information one way, and touch them with a little bit more information from a different avenue, and then touch them from a little bit more information from another avenue. Very few potential clients will say, oh, thank you for calling. I've been thinking about buying that product. Let's sit down and have a conversation. At least that doesn't ever happen to me. The reality is that's interesting. Let me think about that. And then they put it away for a while, or they just totally ignore it. But they said, that was kind of cool, but they deleted the email. They deleted the LinkedIn message. So you touch them again, and then again, and then again. And you touch them with a phone call. You touch them with an email. You touch them with a whole process. And this is why I said earlier that you need to have a process that you're going to go through. You're going to start with a reach out on LinkedIn or an email or a phone call or whatever the case might be. You do that all the time for the first reach out. And then you send a second piece of information. Then you send a third. And it's not doing something crazy like, I'm going to send you half of a book and can I read the other book? Or I'm going to send you a video and then I'm going to stop. No, instead, you're going to constantly reach out to people and constantly touch them. And then all of a sudden, your pipeline will be full of leads that you can then convert into customers at a future point of the sales cycle.
Owners, sales leaders, and salespeople, oftentimes I hear them say, I want to grow my business, I want to grow sales, but I don't want to feel salesy. And I think that that's an important distinction there. And the reason is because whenever you apply the sales label to someone, they pay this tax. It's a mental tax. Like, oh, I'm a salesperson. I'm going to feel icky at the end of my day. I'm being a chameleon, or all those negative connotations. What Sean and I are talking about here about touching people in different mediums is not working somebody over. Let's put a different label on this. Let's think about your 5 closest friends. Do you only email them? Do you only go down the street or across town or wherever and knock on their door? Is it always in person? Do you put a billboard outside their house talking about how much of a good friend they are? No, it's a combination of those, probably not without the billboard, but it's a combination of all those things of keeping in touch, Christmas or holiday cards, maybe not Christmas cards, holiday cards or outreach or spending time together, watching a ball game. You know how to build relationships. In high school, I went to a high school where I had about 1,500 kids in the school. I didn't know all of them well, but my tightest, closest friends, I was spending a lot of time with. Sports teams, clubs, study groups, all the things that we did outside of work too. When you're thinking about your outreach strategy, think about collecting customers like you did collect friends in high school. You got to meet them where they are and go to a mutual outcome that you're both striving for. If you're selling software and you're only calling on people who don't buy software, that's what we're talking about alignment with the market. But specifically where we're trying to make the rubber meet the road here with an outreach strategy, once you've defined that group of people you're going to outreach to, figure out how they measure value. Talk to them in that language. Where do they gather their information? If I'm an engineer, it's probably not from Sports Illustrated. I need to be looking into engineering focused trade magazines and figuring out the trends there. There's lots of things we can do to become more informed about our target customer because that's who we're trying to serve. We're showing up because we want to meet more people like them. Show up well.
I agree. And in fact, I got really good advice 20 years ago from a manager. And he said to me, Sean, customers you can do a lot of things for, you can help them a lot, but they're not a customer. They're not buying from you. What can you do to influence their life? What can you do to make their life better? Because that's what you really want to do. You want to make their life better, that you have the ability to influence their decision about what they should do when it comes to buying your product. And the only thing you can do, you can't get them promoted. You can't give them more money legally. You can't bribe them. You can't get them fired, probably. You just can't do a lot of things. But the only thing you can do for sure is to make them smarter. So you know more about your product, you know more about your industry, you know more about the problems that you solve than probably anybody else in their orbit. You need to make them smarter. And in order to do it, just like when you were in high school, when you were in college, and you were trying to learn a new subject, learn a new thing, did you ever have it where your professor was trying to teach you something, it just wasn't sticking? And then you went back to the dorm room or you went back home or you hung out with your buddies and you said, I'm just not getting that thing that we were talking about today in class. And they go, oh, just think of it like this. And they would give a real simple analogy and it just clicked. That is what you want to do. Your friend that said, think of it like this, the other teacher that said, think of it like this, all they were doing was giving a different perspective on the whole situation. So you want to deliver the same kind of information in 3 or 4 or 10 different ways about how great your company is and how much life would be better if they were a customer of you. And that allows them to finally sync. It takes a couple tries to break through. And so you have to do it from several different perspectives. You have to deliver the same information different ways because people are going to hear it differently. Just like you finally got that Mayhem was actually trying to sell you car insurance and house insurance. And just like we need to end this podcast because it's 15 minutes right now. Thank you very much for your time. Please check with us next week where we talk about sales by 2 tall guys talking sales. Thank you very much for joining us on this podcast of 2 tall guys talking sales. We hope that we were able to share some valuable insight, valuable knowledge with you to make your selling adventures easier and more successful. Please join us every week. We drop these on Tuesday afternoon at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Please subscribe to us in your favorite podcast player. Also, please join us on LinkedIn, where we do a CEO workshop, and that CEO workshop is dedicated monthly to big questions that CEOs are having and how to grow their business and drive sales. You can find us on LinkedIn. Just search for Two Tall Guys Talking Sales. Thank you very much. Have a great day.